pretty often.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's talk about your movie, Simon.
Oh, which one?
The Guest?
Horror Boy Did I? I don't think it went
I
over
want to
that
talk about
well.
The Guest.
Oh, all right.
Welcome to our second installment of our Hidden Gem series, which are films many have most likely not seen that deserve some attention, and we are excited to dive into this one. The Guest is an amalgamation of two creators, the writer Simon Barrett and the director Adam Wingard. During his youth, Simon wanted to be a filmmaker. At his 13th birthday in 1991, he got a VHS camera, and he noted he tried to mimic scenes from Evil Dead 2 and The Reanimator. Adam Wingard's youth was similar. He started making movies when he was in 6th or 7th grade with his brother in Alabama. Adam and his friends would make films like Aliens, where they would pretend they were on an alien planet with a production quality he would later joke about.
And so I just remember like coming out the front door and we were acting like we were coming out onto like an alien planet or something like that. And and we're just kind of filming and it's all like shaky and shitty looking. And I remember like once we were done with this scene, like looking at it, and it looked like shit, and there's just like cows standing around and stuff in broad daylight. And it was like, this doesn't look like aliens.
Meanwhile, Simon was not too great at high school, but he got great scores on his SATs. After high school, he found himself working in a factory. He soon got fed up with it and knew he wanted to go to film school. Because of his good SAT and ACT scores, he qualified for some scholarships and took advantage of it. He would move around colleges until he ended up at Ithaca, New York for 2 years. He would graduate from there in 1999. Around 1998, Adam was struggling during his junior year in high school. He thought he would have to repeat 11th grade, so his parents sat him down and told him they wanted him to get his GED so he could go to film school. They were very supportive of his film interests. With Simon finishing film school, he recalled doing his internship in California, working under film legend Roger Corman during 1999. In the long run, he found no concrete or lasting job in Hollywood, and he needed some consistent income. So he went to a temp agency, and they placed him in a private investigation firm. The company really liked him, and Simon was very adept, so they made him a private investigator, and during this time, he would write movie scripts whenever he had the time. One script in particular was Dead Birds. When Simon finished the script, he was living in New York and sent it to his buddy Jim Busfield, who worked in Hollywood. He wanted advice about his script, and Jim read it. He then called Simon and suggested that instead of wanting to be the director of his script and make nothing, he should let someone else direct and sell his script, thus making something and getting his foot in the door. Simon agreed, and in no time, Dead Birds was approved with a $1.5 million budget. Simon got a paycheck of $30,000 and was overjoyed with the opportunity and the money. Dead Birds is about a Confederate gang of bank robbers who kill many people and go to a not-so-abandoned plantation where they meet something very supernatural. This would then lead to the same producers who bought his script to offer him to write another work called Frankenfish, and he was off to the races. Meanwhile, at Full Sail University, Adam was moving forward. During his junior year, he would start working on the film Homesick, which was about a man who arrives at a party, tells people to say who they hate, and when they do so, the person they name dies horribly. In 2002, when he graduated the university, he was still tuning Homesick, which would be the case for many years to come. It was at this time Adam Wingard's buddy, Evan Katz, who was a writer for Fangoria, was going to do a gory shoot and story on the set of Dead Birds. Adam was curious to see how a big-budget movie would be like, so he tagged along. Simon was on the set filming a gory scene that turned out to be a complete disaster. The trio laughed over the situation, and by the end of the night, Adam and Simon were talking about how much they loved John Woo films. There was an immediate connection between the two. By 2005, Adam started work on a new project called Pop Skull, which was about a drug addict who kept encountering spirits while coping with some serious issues. He would continue tweaking Homesick alongside Pop Skull until they both came out in 2007 at festivals. These projects were made cheap. Homesick was around $40,000 and Pop Skull was around $2,000. When Adam was showing his two projects to audiences, Simon began writing a script called The Guest. The first day he started working on it was October 9th, 2007, but while doing so, he continued being a private investigator to get by. After 17 pages into the project, Simon stopped working on it on April 4th, 2008. This 17-page project was about an ex-soldier suffering from PTSD. He was bullied by Caleb Peterson and the members of his squad. He then killed the one he hated most, and that was Caleb. He then finds the slain man's family and is now trying to insert himself into their home and intends to kill them, as well as get further revenge on the dead person. Simon didn't think much of this script.
It was an unusually punishing and depressing script, like even for me. And so I just abandoned it, and it was called The Guest, and I decided to not finish it.
Simon would even go further by saying this: "This is so self-indulgent. No one's going to want to make this. Why am I doing this to myself?" Simon and Adam would finally team up on A Horrible Way to Die, which was a low-budget film for about $75,000, about a serial killer who escapes from police custody and hunts for his ex-girlfriend, who is struggling to break her addictions. Simon filled various roles from writing, producing, casting director, assistant director, location manager, and music post-production supervisor, while Adam was the main director, editor, camera operator, and music supervisor. Simon said there was so little crew that he had to fill multiple positions. They showed the film at festivals in September 2010, but did not get offers for theatrical release, so the film went straight to video and DVD. They would continue their collaboration on 3 projects. The first was a video-on-demand film called Autoerotic and What Fun We Are Having, 4 stories about date rape. They would then film and finish You're Next, and they showed it at a Toronto Film Festival during September 2011.
And with this film, like, the experiment was literally like, can we make a movie like normal people, you know? Which meant that, you know, I wasn't going to be shaking the cameras, or if you've seen Pop Skull, you know, I wasn't going to be flashing strobe lights into your face while somebody's drinking a lot of cough medicine.
Within 4 days, Lionsgate bought the rights, and the two finally felt like they made it, and now their work was going to be seen. Then, the merger between Lionsgate and Summit occurred, and everything was put on hold. There were a lot of films on the slate for the merged studio, and they needed to figure out what would release when. For the next 2 years, You're Next just sat on the shelf until they got around to it. There were just too many movies for the studio to sift through, so Simon and Adam would have to wait patiently, and eventually the studio would take care of them. And that would be on August 23rd, 2013, when You're Next released. You're Next would be very successful for the team, making $26 million on a $1 million production budget. After living years in debt to pay for their projects, Adam and Simon had some financial security now. Simon left his job as a part-time private investigator after the film's release to focus on his writing. The question was, what were they going to do next together? They wanted to make a movie that they would like to make, rather than make a movie that had to cater to pitching to a studio. But they needed an idea. They were a bit tired of doing horror and wanted to do something with action. So they tinkered with an action project called Non-Stop, which by the title revealed that it was going to be non-stop action. But they never felt right about it. It would start off with a guy getting shot and then being rushed to the hospital in Seoul, Korea. While heading there, the ambulance would be constantly attacked, as the person shot was actually an agent of some kind, and the person driving the ambulance had to help the agent survive. The rest of the film would end up being one huge chase scene, but it seemed too obvious and a bit redundant. The script was never right. It was never that good. To muse over ideas, Adam started watching movies from his roots, and 2 of the big ones were Terminator and Halloween. He was also reading a lot, and one book was called Shock Value by Jason Zinnemann. It's a great book. I highly suggest checking out this book, especially if you're a horror fan. Adams said Shock Value was the book that inspired him to make The Guest. One of the things this book focused on was how outsiders in Hollywood transformed the industry and the way we look at cinema by making the things that they did. Adams said Shock Value was the book that inspired him to make The Guest. Finally, Adam knew what direction they should go. It just clicked that I felt like I just needed to make sort of like a nostalgia picture, like something that defined why I wanted to make movies to begin with. Adam then came to Simon and said that maybe they should do something like a slasher, but with someone who's a bit more robotic. Something like The Terminator meets Halloween. This caused a light bulb to immediately resonate with Simon, because he remembered his 2007 script called The Guest, which by now he abandoned. He reasoned he might be able to adapt it to what Adam was proposing. They talked about the project further and discussed the villain. They wanted to do a Michael Myers, but they didn't want someone wearing a mask, as they had already done that. They wanted someone with a bunch of charm that hid who he really was. Thus, the villain's actual mask is his own face. So Simon went off for about a month working on the project in October 2012, and Adam did not pester him about the script at all, nor show impatience. They were friends, so whenever they collaborated, Adam would allow him to do his job without supervision, while Simon didn't question him later in the editing. Despite this, Adam would sometimes contact him and ask him, "Are you writing a movie that can have this song in it? Are you writing an action scene that can have this song in it?" While Simon wrote the script, Adam would do other things while constantly watching Prometheus, a few houses down from where Simon was busy doodling away on his ideas. In fact, Adam was so obsessed with Prometheus that Adam is positive the main character had a placeholder named David, due to Michael Fassbender's performance in that film. However, Simon does not remember that being the case. Whatever the case, the first draft would be finished on December 10th, 2012. In the early drafts of the script, David was wounded in combat, and he was experimented on by a company, and thus he was more of a cyborg than human. One detail that was confirmed to me was that early on, David simply had the ability to turn off any negative emotion or trauma like a switch. There were also other debates about revealing David's origin in the film. They felt there was too much in the first draft, and so they toned it down. They would cut it down even more after filming, which we will go over. Another point debated was if there should be a father with the family, but then it seemed the story would be more about David seducing the mother to get into the house. So rather than go that route, they decided to have a father in the home. The ending was also quite different in that Anna was into archery and would kill David that way before the school would be destroyed thanks to a cat and mouse chase in the school that involved Bunsen burners being turned on and would eventually cause the school to go ablaze. When it was finally finished, Adam read the script and gave his thumbs up. The next step was to send it to Keith and Jess Calder, who produced their last film, You're Next. There were a few notes sent back about the script, like character details, and so on, but within no time, The Guest went into pre-production. The goal was to honor 80s and 90s action films and have fun with this film. It was a passion project. Early on, as the project evolved forward, there was talk of turning The Guest into a television show. It would have been a mini-series, but this did not come to pass. A lot of thought was put into the music of this film. In fact, before filming began, a lot of music was selected to be in the film, especially the song Haunted When the Minutes Drag, and often the question was, where do these tracks go? Adam's assistant, Anna, helped pick out 1/3 of the music for this film as well. For the score of the movie, Steve Moore would compose the music. In December 2012, there was a shooting at Sandy Hook, so everyone involved thought that would be a bad way to end this movie in light of current events. So, everything changed to a new ending, which you would later see in the film. Jess and Keith Calder, who were the main producers of this film, were very supportive of Adam and Simon's vision, and they hoped a star could be nabbed to make the film easier to pre-sell the movie to a studio. Then Adam met Dan Stevens at a restaurant. Dan wanted to break into Hollywood and was most known for Downton Abbey. Both actor and director shared a same twisted humor towards horror, and Adam knew he was just perfect for the main character of David. The problem was, Dan wasn't really a big star back then. Regardless, Jess and Keith stood by the director's choice, even though there were some worries that a big star was needed to sell this movie and get it into theaters. On June 11th, 2013, Dan Stevens signed to star in The Guest. Once he got the role, he began working at the gym to gain muscle, as he was really thin from his previous role. When Micah Monroe first read the script, she did not notice any comedy elements at all in the movie. But when she started doing research and watched You're Next, she realized that The Guest had a lot of sarcasm and humor in it. Knowing this, when she went in to read for the part, she allowed her sarcastic and humorous side to show. And this, in turn, was exactly what Adam and Simon were looking for. It did not take them much time to decide she was perfect for the part. When Micah Monroe was cast, they saw her as blonde and bubbly, and they wanted music that matched that personality for her in the film. So they decided to use the Love and Rockets song Haunted When the Minutes Drag for one of her scenes, which pretty much became the theme song for the film. Now, an interesting thing about the character of Anna is that she is based off Adam Wingard's assistant, Anna Cook, who helped Adam pick out the songs for the film. The runner-ups for the part were Margaret Qualley and Alicia Dednam Carey. In all, they were sent 50 to 100 video auditions, and they selected 30 to 40 to meet in person. In the end, on June 26th, Micah Monroe signed for the part of Anna. Lance Reddick and Brendan Meyer signed on July 8th. Lance was used to playing top cops in most material. This is what he said helped him take the part.
I was a huge fan then, so when I found out that, I mean, I'm a Downton Abbey geek, you know. And then what really pushed me over the edge was having a conversation with Adam. I just, told him my concerns and he addressed them, and pretty much hung up the phone and said I wanted to, call my agent and said I wanted to do it.
Leland Orser would also follow, as he was cast for Spencer. He was a perfect mix for this film, and that would be no surprise because he was accustomed to already being in sarcastic, dark films. One need only look at Escape from L.A., Alien Resurrection, and Very Bad Things to see this. Simon noted he was unusually good at being silly while being grounded in scenes.
Your wife seems to respect you, sir. Oh, yeah. It's what it is,
The locations for the film were Moriarty, Edgewood, and Estancia, New Mexico. When it came to the location, it was all about money. Since they were an independent production, they had to be flexible where they could film, and New Mexico had some great tax incentives there. Therefore, they adapted to what you see in the film, rather than what they envisioned, which was the Pacific Northwest, with lots of trees and such. Principal photography began on July 17, 2013. On the first day of shooting, they filmed David doing the gun purchase in the quarry. During the shoot, Leland Orser would constantly improv while everyone on the set did the script pretty much verbatim. After takes, Leland would go up to Simon apologizing, but the truth of the matter was both Simon and Adam liked his takes and therefore kept them in the movie. Now, when you look at the script of this movie, you will not see the humor of the father at all, and it's just a perfect example of how an actor can really turn a role into something else, and it's never seen on the page of the script. I also want to take a moment to single out Sheila Kelly because what she shows in the film is just an incredible visual performance that transcended the pages of the script. A credit to her abilities, and we will go into that as we cover it in later parts of this series. Now, sometimes during filming, Rebecca Hall would visit the set as she went to college with Dan and they were friends. often she would help Dan babysit the kids while he was filming, and this was sometimes the reason for her visits. Rebecca would work with Simon and Adam in the future, not only in the Godzilla vs. Kong films, but Onslaught. When I learned about a practical joke Adam played on Micah, I asked Adam if there was much of this kind of fun on the set, and his reply was honestly, no, there was no time. They were always on the move. The practical joke I'm referring to was in the Halloween maze. Adam put two guys in costume and had them play mannequins specifically to surprise Micah for fun. Here is that footage, and her fear was an honest reaction.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
Filming would end on August 23, 2013. The last scene shot for the film was the swing set scene with Anna and her boyfriend. Simon and Adam noted that they were filming the last scene for this movie the day You're Next arrived in theaters in America. All in all, the shoot was relatively smooth, and even though they were working at a fast pace, there was a lot of camaraderie at the set. I do want to take a moment to thank Adam and Simon personally for providing many pictures for this video and spending hours talking about this movie for this and upcoming videos. I also want to ask that you check out some of their films if you get a chance to support them in thanks, as they ask nothing in return for being involved in these vids. That's one of the reasons why I love these guys, because they want to sincerely share stuff with their audiences, and we should all support them for that. With that said, we will see you in part 2, where we will go over the release and distribution of the film, as well as starting our coverage of the movie itself. And just remember, if you're desperate for friends, please remember, you need to have some boundaries.
You killed Dad's boss too, right? I don't care. I'm not going to say anything.
Why not?
Because we're friends.
We will see you next time. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Super thanks helps, and so does sharing.